Life has a way of pressing you down, of putting weight on your shoulders, of leaving you wondering if joy is even possible. But hear me when I say this. Happiness is not the absence of trouble. It is the decision to rise in the middle of it. You don't need everything to be perfect to choose joy. You don't need every storm to stop before you decide to dance in the rain. Sometimes you have to push yourself into joy, push yourself into laughter, push yourself into the light when everything around you feels dark. Happiness is a choice, not a circumstance. That truth may sound simple, but it is one of the hardest things we'll ever learn to live by. Too often we tie our emotions to the events unfolding around us. We wait for the bank account to be full before we feel secure, for the relationship to be perfect before we feel loved, for the sickness to leave before we feel grateful, for the storm to pass before we dare to sing. But life was never designed to give you perfect conditions in order for you to rejoice. If you wait for everything to line up, you will spend your life waiting and never living. Trouble will always find its way to your doorstep. Some days it will be the loss of something you held dear. Other days it will be the disappointment of dreams delayed. And on other days it may be the quiet loneliness that lingers in the night. But joy is not found in waiting for the storm to stop. Joy is found in learning to dance while it is still raining. That is why happiness is not about circumstance. It is about decision. You can be broke, but you don't have to be broken. You can be tired, but you don't have to be empty. You can be pressed, but you don't have to be crushed. It is not what happens to you that determines the posture of your heart. It is what you choose in response to it. You may not have control over the diagnosis, over the betrayal, over the setback, but you have control over whether you will sink in it or rise above it. Happiness is not waiting for your environment to shift. It is demanding that your soul rises in spite of the environment. It is refusing to let bitterness set the tone of your life. It is declaring that peace will live in your heart, even if war is raging around you. It is commanding your spirit to sing, even if your eyes are still wet with tears. Think about it. When has life ever handed you a season with no trouble attached to it? Even in the moments that felt sweet, there was always something imperfect in the background. If you anchor your joy to perfection, you will never taste it. That is why you must push yourself into joy. Some mornings you will wake up and your feelings will not want to cooperate. They will tell you to sulk, to complain, to give up. But feelings are not masters, they are messengers. You can hear them, but you don't have to obey them. You can rise from your bed and speak to your own soul. You can tell your heart, this is the day that has been given to me, and I will rejoice in it. That kind of declaration does not ignore reality. It overrides it. It refuses to give darkness the final say. The truth is, happiness must be intentional. Left on its own, the human mind drifts toward worry, toward fear, toward comparison. If you do not set your heart toward joy, life will drag you into despair by default. That is why the push is necessary. It is not a gentle stroll. It is not a casual decision. It is a push. You push yourself through the weight of discouragement. You push yourself past the echo of failure. You push yourself out of the shadows of regret. You push yourself to believe that even in the middle of chaos, there is still beauty to behold. There is still love to give. There is still laughter to release. Happiness requires effort, not because joy is scarce, but because distraction is abundant. Everything around you will compete for your attention, but you must train your eyes to see the light even when surrounded by shadows. You see, joy is not a denial of pain. It is not pretending that the struggle is easy. It is not smiling to cover up the ache. It is a conscious decision to look pain in the eye and say, "You will not steal my song." It is choosing to hold on to hope when everything around you whispers despair. It is declaring that even if the valley is long, the mountain is still ahead. That is why some of the happiest people are not those who have the most, but those who have learned the art of choosing joy with the least. They have discovered that peace cannot be purchased and joy cannot be borrowed. It must rise from within, and it rises when you decide it will rise. So, if you are waiting for life to make you happy, you will be waiting forever. You must push yourself into it. You must choose it again and again, even when it doesn't feel natural. You must remind yourself that circumstances do not dictate destiny and storms do not decide seasons. The push for happiness is not a one-time decision. It is a daily discipline. It is the discipline of waking up and declaring that the day will not conquer you. The problem will not define you. The loss will not silence you. It is the strength of the soul to rise above the storm, to smile in the face of sorrow, to laugh even with tears in your eyes, because happiness is not something that comes to you. It is something that flows from you. Gratitude builds joy because it shifts the lens through which you see your life. When hardship comes, the natural instinct is to stare at the wound, to focus on the loss, to magnify what went wrong until it fills your entire horizon. You replay the moment you were betrayed. You relive the day you were rejected. You keep counting the things that slipped out of your hands. But gratitude has a way of redirecting your vision. It teaches you to turn your eyes from what is missing to what remains, from what you lost to what you still carry, from the doors that close to the ones that are quietly opening. Gratitude does not deny the pain, but it changes your perspective of it. When you learn to thank your way through tears, you rob pain of its power to dominate you. There is a quiet strength in a grateful heart. It does not need everything to be perfect to find reasons to rejoice. It does not wait for a big blessing before it lifts its voice in thanks. Gratitude notices the little mercies that are easy to overlook. The breath still moving in your lungs, the strength to rise when yesterday you thought you couldn't, the hand that reached out to comfort you when you were breaking inside. A grateful heart counts these as treasures, and the more you count them, the more joy begins to rise inside you. Joy does not come because the problems disappeared. Joy comes because gratitude shifted your focus from what drains you to what sustains you. When you choose gratitude, you break the cycle of complaining. Complaints are magnets for misery. The more you rehearse what's wrong, the more you convince yourself that life has nothing good to offer. But gratitude interrupts that downward spiral. Instead of rehearsing your sorrows, you begin to rehearse your blessings. You start telling yourself not only what hurt, but also what helped. You begin to see how even in the darkest seasons, something or someone showed up to carry you a little further. And when you trace the hand of grace through your past, you can't help but feel joy rising in your present. Gratitude also softens the heart in ways nothing else can. Bitterness grows when we water it with constant reminders of what was unfair. Anger intensifies when we dwell only on how much we lost. But gratitude weakens the roots of bitterness because it forces you to acknowledge that even in your pain, life has not abandoned you. Gratitude creates space in your heart for joy to grow because joy cannot share the same soil as resentment. When you start thanking instead of resenting, you make room for healing to begin. There are people who seem to walk in joy regardless of what life throws at them. They are not superhuman. They have simply mastered the art of gratitude. They know how to find beauty in broken places. They know how to look at a scar, and instead of only seeing the wound, they see the survival. They know how to smile, not because life is easy, but because life is still here, and they are still here, and there is still more ahead. Gratitude arms them with a joy that circumstances cannot touch. The most powerful thing about gratitude is that it multiplies what you value. If you complain about what you lack begins to feel larger. But if you celebrate what you have begins to feel richer. Gratitude magnifies blessings. It stretches the little you have until it feels like much. It shifts your mentality from scarcity to abundance, from deficit to provision. And when you live in that kind of abundance mindset, joy flows naturally. You no longer feel like life has cheated you because you realize life has already given you far more than you deserved. Gratitude also connects you to others. When you live with a thankful heart, you see people differently. Instead of criticizing every flaw, you appreciate their presence in your life. Instead of resenting what someone could not give you, you value what they did give. Gratitude turns relationships into sources of joy because you stop demanding perfection and start celebrating contribution. And when you express that gratitude, it strengthens bonds, deepens love, and spreads joy to everyone around you. Gratitude has a way of turning survival into celebration. You may have walked through fire, but if you are grateful, you can still dance on the ashes. You may have cried until your eyes could cry no more, but gratitude will still find a reason to smile through the tears. You may not be where you want to be, but gratitude reminds you that you are not where you used to be. That awareness births joy. It reminds you that progress, no matter how small, is still a reason to celebrate. And as long as you can find one reason to be grateful, you will always have one reason to be joyful. Pain will visit every life, but pain does not have to become your identity. Too many people have allowed the wounds of yesterday to rewrite the definition of who they are today. They carry labels born out of what they went through. Abandoned, rejected, betrayed, forgotten, and slowly those labels become the way they see themselves. But pain, no matter how deep, was never meant to define you. It may mark you, it may scar you, but it does not have the authority to rename you. You can be hurt and still whole. You can be wounded and still walking. You can be knocked down and still rising. The presence of pain is not the absence of purpose. There are scars on your body, scars on your soul, scars on your mind that testify of battles you did not choose but somehow survived. Those scars are not proof of weakness. They are evidence of endurance. They tell the story that you went through the fire and came out on the other side. Yet if you stare too long at them, if you let them become the mirror through which you see yourself, they will trick you into believing that you are nothing more than the pain you endured. That is why you must push yourself beyond the narrative of your suffering. Pain may be part of your story, but it is not the whole book. It is a chapter, not the conclusion. It is a valley, not the entirety of the journey. Pain has a way of whispering lies in the silence. It tells you that because you failed, you are a failure. It tells you that because you were rejected, you are unworthy. It tells you that because you lost something, you have nothing left. But the truth is different. You are not defined by the worst thing that happened to you. You are not trapped inside the moment that broke you. Pain is an experience, not an identity. You lived through it, but it does not live as you. When you allow it to take the seat of definition, you start living beneath your potential, making choices out of fear, and carrying shame that was never yours to carry. You must learn to separate the event from the essence. Yes, the event happened. Yes, it hurt. Yes, it left marks that others may never see. But the essence of who you are was never diminished by the event. Your value is not negotiable because of the pain you went through. Gold does not stop being gold just because it has been buried in the dirt. Diamonds do not lose their worth just because they were formed under crushing pressure. And your life does not lose its purpose because it has been through seasons of pain. If anything, pain often uncovers strength you did not know you had. It reveals resilience. It awakens compassion. It teaches endurance. There are people who spend their entire lives circling the same wilderness because they cannot move beyond what hurt them. They rehearse the memory again and again, building monuments to their pain and bowing before it every day. But you cannot step into joy while worshiping your wounds. You cannot walk into destiny while clutching tightly to yesterday's disappointment. You must make the decision to rise above it, to say, yes, it hurt me, but it will not define me. Yes, it marked me, but it will not master me. Yes, it shaped me, but it will not shrink me. That decision is not a denial of reality. It is the reclaiming of identity. Every person who has ever walked in greatness has carried pain, but they refused to be named by it. They used it as fuel. They used it as wisdom. They used it as a stepping stone. Pain became their teacher, not their master. It pressed them, but it did not crush them. It wounded them, but it did not erase them. If you look closely at those who radiate joy, you will often find that they are not the ones who never face trouble, but the ones who refuse to let trouble determine their truth. They found the courage to walk with a limp and still move forward. They discovered that wholeness is not the absence of scars, but the refusal to let scars silence your song. When you understand this, you no longer run from pain, but you no longer bow to it either. You face it, you acknowledge it, but you to declare it will not have the final word. You start living from a place of identity that is bigger than the battle you fought. You remember that you are more than the sum of your struggles, more than the measure of your mistakes, more than the collection of your losses. You are defined by the strength that kept you standing when you thought you would collapse. You are defined by the breath that still fills your lungs even after nights of crying. You are defined by the possibility that still calls you forward even when the past tries to pull you back. Pain may be part of your journey, but it does not get to write your name. Every hardship is temporary, but when you are in the middle of it, it feels permanent. Pain has a way of convincing you that this is how it will always be, that the night will never end, that the burden will never lift, that the tears will never dry. But storms are seasonal. Even the fiercest winds eventually grow quiet. Even the heaviest rains eventually cease. If you anchor your hope only to what you see today, you will believe the lie that this moment defines the rest of your life. But when you choose to live beyond the moment, you remind yourself that what is happening now is not the end of the story. You remind yourself that the page can still turn, that the chapter can still shift, that tomorrow holds possibilities that today cannot imagine. When you decide to live beyond the moment, you break free from the trap of despair. Despair is nothing more than the conclusion that tomorrow will look exactly like today. It tells you that there is no reason to hope, no reason to dream, no reason to push forward. But hope interrupts that voice. Hope whispers that change is possible, that healing is still available, that the door can still open. Hope reminds you that life moves in seasons and that no season is forever. You may be in the winter now, but spring is already written into the design of time. Choosing to live beyond the moment is choosing to believe in seasons you have not yet seen. Living beyond the moment also requires vision. Vision sees further than sight. Sight tells you what is right in front of you. Vision tells you what could be beyond it. Sight says the valley is all there is. Vision says there is a mountain beyond the valley. Sight shows you the bill, the diagnosis, the heartbreak, the setback. Vision shows you the possibility of recovery, the potential of growth, the promise of a better tomorrow. If you live only by sight, you will sink in sorrow. But if you live by vision, you will rise in expectation. Vision is what keeps you moving when sight tries to paralyze you. This is why some people collapse under pressure and others rise through it. Both experienced the weight, both felt the pain, but one lived according to what they saw and the other according to what they envisioned. Living beyond the moment does not mean denying what is real. It means refusing to let what is real blind you to what is possible. It means learning how to see tomorrow while standing in today. It means cultivating faith that tells you storms pass, wounds heal, tears dry, and joy comes in the morning. When you learn to live beyond the moment, you also learn the power of anticipation. Anticipation is joy in advance. It is celebration before the breakthrough. It is laughter before the victory. It is lifting your hands while the battle is still raging because you know the fight is not the finish. Anticipation trains your spirit to live from a place of hope rather than despair. It teaches you to dance while you are still in the dark, to sing while you are still in the struggle, to rejoice while you are still in the valley. Anticipation becomes fuel that carries you through the hardest seasons because you are no longer waiting for the outcome to feel joy. You are living in the certainty that better is coming. Living beyond the moment is also about resilience. Resilience is the ability to bend but not break, to fall but not stay down, to be wounded but not quit. When you anchor yourself beyond the moment, you develop resilience because you are no longer tied to the ups and downs of today. You can be disappointed but still determined, weary but still walking, pressed but still pushing. Resilience says, I am not finished yet. Resilience says, I will not let this chapter define my book. Resilience gives you the courage to keep moving forward even when the ground beneath you feels unstable. Every person who has ever overcome great adversity did so because they learned how to live beyond the moment. They were able to see beyond the pain of today into the promise of tomorrow. They were able to endure the weight of trials because they believed in the reward of perseverance. They understood that the struggle was shaping them, preparing them, strengthening them for something greater. Living beyond the moment does not take away the pain, but it gives the pain purpose. It transforms suffering into training, hardship into growth, obstacles into opportunities. When you embrace this mindset, you no longer settle into despair when life gets difficult. You no longer assume that the valley is permanent. You no longer accept that trouble will define you forever. Instead, you lift your eyes. You fix your focus on the horizon. You remind yourself that storms are seasonal, that hardship is temporary, that this too shall pass. And in the middle of the hardest nights, you hold on to the vision of the sunrise that is already on its way.